the sand, welcome to the front row. Real life hitting, everybody wanna know. When the spin get thick, who cuts through the chain? AK, David Drew stepping into the frame. Late nights, boots in the dirt. From the grind to the house, to the stove, to the grease stained shirts. Parents, pegrees, fight for what's true. From the clinic to the warehouse, to your living room. Headlines screaming, but we ain't scared. Faith in our bones, yeah, we came prepared. Culture war is unchained. Where the real ones meet the rage. Where the truth cuts through the noise. Every voice on the stage. Culture war is unchained. From the heartland to your brain. If you're tired of the script, we're here to break the chain.
All right. Welcome to Culture Warriors Unchained. Hopefully it's on me talking right now. And yeah, we got a great show tonight. That was our intro. We're working out the kinks. We're a highly professional show right here. And yeah, we got some great topics coming up. Topic number one, we got the NFL, had the Super Bowl this past weekend. And the new thing was Turning Point USA had their own alternative halftime show. So we'll talk about the differences between those. Brad Arnold of Three Doors Down, Kryptonite, Remember When I'm Gone, all those of the late 90s, early 2000s. He passed away due to cancer, so we'll talk about that. Trump's DHS wins detention policy in the Fifth Circuit, we'll get into. Robots doing different kind of things, we'll get into that as well later on. And then this is a weird, really strange story with Savannah Guthrie. So her mother is missing. It's very ransom-like. It's very like 90s ransom movie. There's a lot of weird things kind of going on. We'll break that down. And then the governor race update in Minnesota. We got to get our Minnesota update with all the craziness going on. But yeah, so right now we got our guest tonight is Breanne Dressen. Bree, tell the people who you are, what you do.
Hey, I'm Breanne Dressen. I was a previously healthy mother of two young kids. I was a preschool teacher, just everyday American living her life. And then I signed up for a clinical trial for the COVID vaccines, became severely injured through that process. In that process, it became kind of a nightmare of a situation where I ended up at the center of government cover-up, drug companies cover-up, social media cover-up, and with all of them doing nothing but hiding us, we decided to start a organization called React 19 that advocates for people that have been harmed by the COVID vaccines. So,
excellent. Yeah, and if you tuned in last week, we had Joel on. He's the other co-founder of React 19, and we had a pretty good discussion. And then a little bit later, we'll get really into Breanne's story as well. And then I'm Drew, your also vaccine injured combat veteran, trying to figure out, do some speaking engagement, national spokesperson, adaptive athlete, and podcaster now. And then we got David.
Yeah, thanks for that, Drew. Good evening, everybody. Make sure that you hit the like button, share this video with your friends, as we like to say sometimes, your enemies, and anybody else that you think would get some benefit from this. And make sure you hit the subscribe button if you already haven't done that. My name is David Webster. They call me the Peruvian gentleman in some circles. And I'm here, I guess, as the legal immigrant, military veteran like Drew as well. And I just like to bring my perspective from my life experience and kind of push back on the noise and some of the narratives that we've been hearing both from mainstream media, the left, and sometimes even people on the right, because they don't always get it right either. And that's kind of my role here. And apparently I'm funny.
AK, what about you?
My name's AK Kamara. I'm actually the Republican National Committee man that represents the state of Minnesota's Republican Party to the National Republican Party. I also create content basically everywhere where you can create content. And my hope is to really, and role is to be able to bring people that are interested in right of center political beliefs, cultural values, and try and get them at least interested in doing more than just voting. Like, clearly the vote at the end of the day matters more than anything, but I also want people to actually start becoming engaged in the actual political party. And if the Republican Party is the party for you, I'm hoping that to, kind of dispel this idea or myth that it's like only for the elites. Like, quite literally, as dumb as it sounds, I'm one of the 168 elite members of the Republican National Committee. We don't get together in, dark back rooms and cut deals. Most of us are like just normal Americans, but I just hope to be able to do that. And so make sure that you guys hit the like button, the subscribe button. Make sure that you guys also go and check out our podcasts. So if you can't watch the show live, or maybe you like to listen to audio only, we're basically right now on iHeart, we're on Pandora, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, and also on Spotify. So go and check us out there. The more that you guys like and share our content, the bigger our podcast is going to be. And with that, I'll kick it back to you, Mr. Drew.
Excellent. Yeah, big shout out to AK. Over the last week, he's been putting in the work, getting us on as many streaming, listening, audio things possible. So yeah, doing a great job. And then our producer, appreciate it, AM in the background, helping us out, pushing the buttons. But yeah, let's get into it. So let's talk about the Super Bowl. So basically, we got here from the post-millennial breaking Kid Rock's Tell You Can't overtakes Bad Bunny's for the top slot on iTunes. So this is in reference to Turning Point USA put on an alternative to the halftime show. And so leading up to it, there's been, controversy. 6 months ago, Bad Bunny was announced to be the performer at the Super Bowl. He went on Saturday Night Live. I honestly didn't know who Bad Bunny was. I kind of still don't know who he is. And in Saturday Night Live, when he hosted, he goes, "Well, America, you better learn Spanish because you got 6 months, and because the whole thing's going to be in Spanish." And true to form, that's what it was. It was in Spanish. It was a lot of Puerto Rico kind of stuff, But the main thing was, and this wasn't just to a Bad Bunny or an alternative there. Charlie Kirk with Turning Point USA has been thinking about how can we get more into culture and have an alternative for the Super Bowl even before Charlie Kirk passed away last year. So you guys tell me, what did you watch the Super Bowl? What did you watch for? Did you watch for the halftime show? Did you watch for the commercials? I was cooking food and while watching for the commercials. So what's going on with you, AK?
Yeah, so, listen, I love the NFL. Like, I grew up playing football in middle school, in high school. More than anything, I guess I would say I'm like a Vikings fan. But yeah, listen, I love football, so I watched the big game. When I first found out that Bad Bunny was going to be the half for him, I'm like, who cares? This dude, he's garbage. And I was like, I'm not going to I just won't watch it. But when TPUSA came out and they said, listen, we're going to have our own halftime show, I'm like, that's how you actually push back against the culture. And I think they did a phenomenal job, to the point that, according to some of these reports, they had like 6.1 million, potentially like 1.75 million concurrent viewers. And so the audience needs to understand what that means. Like, at the same exact time, all across all these platforms, mostly YouTube and Rumble, there was almost 6.2 million people watching the stream live. So Kid Rock, Lee Bryce,
Brantley Gilbert,
Brantley
put it
Gilbert.
out there. Yep.
Yeah, and so I think that is a huge success. That's more concurrent viewers than most, talk shows and like the top build shows on TV right now. Concurrent though, and I think right now, when I was looking at how many millions of views they've already hit 50 million total views across their streaming platform. So I think it was wildly successful to show that, yeah, people don't want to watch that nonsense. Now, personally, I thought it was stupid. I didn't understand a single word. I am very America centric, and we speak English in this country. So if you're going to have a performer, unless they got a real banger that just everyone knows, like Despacito or any of these other songs where it's just like a hit phenom, like cultural phenom, people are going to be like, yeah, I don't even understand what this dude is saying. So I thought it was super lame. I thought the visuals were cool, but yeah, I didn't understand any words except for when Lady Gaga sang for a minute. I was like, oh, there's some English there.
Yeah, let's play this and see what.
Incredible. I saw a clip of this bar. It was trending on Instagram of like this, I guess, leftist person that was at the bar, which I don't know why they go to the bars. I'm just kidding. Bars for everybody. They went up to the bar owner and tried to get in his face because he had this showing on all of his TVs. And he basically just looked at him like, "Get out of my face, get out of my bar. Like you don't get to tell me what goes on the screens in my bar. If you don't like it, this is that bar, and that bar. Like this is, all of my patrons are happy." And that it's good to see that people kind of like standing on ultimately what the customer wants, which is really I think that's the big thing with these two competing shows is you're seeing the reality is you have to give the customer what they want, right? It kind of goes back to like when Daily Wire and Disney were competing to put out a Snow White movie. One was probably going to do better if it had actually ever come out infinitely than the one that Disney made, because you have to give the customer what they want.
Yeah,
And most normal
competition
people,
is,
this is
is
what they want.
always good. I remember back in the 90s, around that time, it was McDonald's and Burger King were the top two, fast food. It's like, which one do you like more? Fries, this or that. And I just remember all the other fast food, they're like, oh yeah, we're trying to get up to number one, number two. And Wendy's was like, no, we're number three and we're good right here. Don't, pay attention to us. We make just enough and, it's all good. They're like, they can worry about it because Wendy's did not want to be number two. They'd rather let them duke it out. And it was interesting. But now, yeah, that whole comparison now, because people are like, oh, the Super Bowl made, 100 million more than this. And they're like, that doesn't mean anything. But when you look at it, you got to start somewhere. And the whole thing right now in Florida is you got Disney, who's, just been the Goliath for forever. But Universal Studios is slowly chipping away. And now they got their Epic Universe, and they can kind of see the writing on the wall, and they're just going after it little by little. And that's where I see this Turning Point USA kind of going in many different aspects. So next year they might be even bigger, and then maybe they're selling ads, and it turns into something a lot larger. So it's interesting. I do like the competition, and it just brings out the best in everything. And I just wondered, like the whole Bad Bunny, like that would have been perfect for like soccer, football, football, and everything like that, perfect. But it's like you're coming into, and he said like, oh, we're all American, and I think he was talking more of like, because he did say at the end it was like Canada, Mexico, and it's like, yeah, part of North America, the continent, but this is very specific to the United States of America. And I didn't think it was a big deal between the both until I looked on Facebook, and I saw so many people like going back and forth. And so that, yeah, it turned out more of a controversy than I thought it was. David?
So the reality is either Bad Bunny doesn't know the difference between countries and continents, and that's probably an indictment of the American education system, because Puerto Rico is technically part of America, which just brings back the argument of getting rid of the Department of Education. So I think there is a positive that has come out of this halftime show, which is if you don't know the difference between America as a country and America as a continent, the education system failed you, and we should give that back to the parents and the communities and the states. That's my take on this whole situation. There is something good that can come out of this.
Brienne, did you watch the Super Bowl?
No.
I was wondering. I'm really
I didn't
wondering.
think it was worth it. So
Oh God, that was such a good answer.
No, yeah, good answer. Yeah, because I'm curious.
Sorry.
Like nowadays,
Not sorry.
Two teams, that didn't really have quarterbacks that were, well known as compared to Tom Brady and a lot of other ones in the past. And yeah, it's just it didn't feel like it hit as much. And then the whole if you look at like the Super Bowl used to be a big thing for movie previews for the whole year. It's like we got our Star Wars, our Marvel, and all these other summer blockbusters, and you didn't see a lot of that. You saw a few of them, but now on the internet we see, you know, spoilers, we see, you know, clips, and so it's like, does the movies even need to pay whatever it is, $6 million for 30 seconds of it? And it seems to be like just kind of going down the drain. That was my opinion I got from everything.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is important to understand, and I'm going to push back against you, Drew. Sam Darnold, all right? We had him here in Minnesota. We trade him away, and look, he wins the Super Bowl. So I agree that we don't have like superstars battling back and forth. It was a defensive game. Everyone knew it was going to be defensive. But to me, what matters most is like the NFL, they don't care about the average American consumer of the NFL. Like, they've decided that what they want to do is go after the international audience. And I think that's insane, dude. Like, the revenue share is coming from us in the United States that watch the games, that buy the merchandise, right? Like, I know that they want to try and get more eyeballs from other countries, but I've looked at a bunch of the data and it just doesn't translate other than ad revenue. So what they're trying to do is they're like getting these large, you know, media organizations to pay them a ton of cash to stream games that people don't even care about in other countries. And that's what they've decided, that they'd rather chase the prospect of advertising revenue dollars than actually reward the fans that watch the game. And I'm almost at the point where, like, if you had asked me this like a couple of years ago, like, I'm not going to boycott and not watch the NFL because I love the NFL. Like I said, like, I grew up playing it and I love the Vikings. But I'm at the point where, like, that's the only way that they're going to ever, I guess, try and take us into consideration, fans, is if we just stop watching, which sucks. But and that's where I'm at, man. That's the point that I'm at. The fact that they would play a halftime Super Bowl entertainment product that did not speak a lick of English from the main performer is just a spit in the face to say, like, yeah, all of you stupid Americans that love this game that speak English, like, F you. So that's where I'm at, man. That's my final piece, is just like, I'm at the point where I'm just like, whatever, I guess I'm going to stop watching the NFL. Maybe I'll find like some like pirate bootleg version to watch that the NFL won't get any ad revenue share.
Well, that's the thing. More people are
Extreme
moving over
sports.
to
Start watching extreme sports. When you get cuts and bruises and all that stuff, I mean, you're more apt to be a little more on the conservative side. Because I think it's because you're built a little tougher. But yeah, I agree. I haven't really been a huge watcher of the Super Bowl in the last couple of years. Just, you know, some of the, like I said, I think on our last episode, I said the last good halftime show I saw was from like The Weeknd, and even he's kind of more on that side. But he was like, I'm just going to perform my performance. Chat. If you guys watched the Super Bowl, let us know. What did you think of it? Did you watch the Turning Point event? Did you watch the abomination that the NFL decided to treat us to? That was a great time. And I agree with you, AK, as somebody from one of those Latin American countries that's in the continent of America, Bad Bunny, if you're watching this, not the country of America. I didn't want to see that. Like, we speak English here. Even,
it was what
me.
it was expected. Yeah. It was virtue signaling, which people can like whatever they want to like, but the dollars are going to go somewhere. And it's interesting because the last couple years, I thought they were getting more into like, oh, let's bring back the older ones. Because it might have been a couple years ago. It was with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and all those, where they went back to like that '90s. That was awesome, and
that was such a good show. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, a combination of different ones. Yeah, that Justin Timberlake from a couple years ago. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where it goes, especially with, you know, AI and then just kind of regurgitating old music and movies. We'll see what kind of the next year looks like. But yeah, we got John in here. John says, "Howdy guys, I watched the game. It was really boring." I'm with you, John. I watched TPUSA halftime show, and then about 5 minutes into the third period, and I stopped watching. So
or quarter.
Yeah.
Or quarter. We do quarters in football.
Period. Yeah.
Periods are hockey.
Right. Yeah. Any final thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Again, my thing is, I've never been much of like a boycott dude because I'm like free market capitalist guy. But at this point, dude, like the NFL doesn't care about the average American because I did some research. Only 18% of American citizens speak and understanding Spanish. That's it, 18%. And I imagine that of that 18% that speak it fluently, a significantly smaller portion of that actually enjoy the NFL on a regular basis. So if that's the case, then I guess they can get people to watch it that come from Spanish-speaking countries, and the NFL will crash and burn, and then maybe we can have a real football league back again for Americans. And by Americans, I mean United States of America, not South Americans or Canadians, like whatever.
Yeah, and I wonder if it was even streaming on any of the platforms, because you notice like UFC is on Paramount Plus. I know a lot more regular sports are streaming on the services right now. So yeah, I just tuned into the whatever antenna TV, and I'm like, this isn't very interesting. But yeah, we'll go to David if you're ready and you want to talk about some Brad Arnold, Three Doors Down. If you go crazy, or if I go crazy, will you still call me Superman? Talk to us about that.
Probably not. I don't think I ever did. Though I see what you did there with the sign behind you. That was clever. I like that. I don't even think you realized that was there when you said that. Yeah, absolutely. So I have the Ground News article up, AM, if you want to throw that up for us. Let me see here. I think I can pull it up too if we need be.
Yeah, big in the 90s. I was a big Three Doors Down fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Kryptonite, but then all the other songs that went along with it. And it's very, yeah, that was definitely my jam.
All right, here it is. Perfect. Do the proceed the story thing. There we go. All right, so on Saturday, Brad Arnold, lead singer and founding member of Three Doors Down, died after a battle with cancer, and a representative said he died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his wife and family. And I wasn't even aware that he had cancer. I was aware of the canceled tour because I've been a big Three Doors Down fan. I don't know if any of you remember that 90s upbringing where you rode the yellow school buses to school. And they just have some generic whatever's popular playing, right? You'd hear all those hits of the 90s, of the summertime and stuff. And yeah, I remember like Kryptonite and there's so many good hits from that band.
Did they play?
Yeah, it's just,
they played music on your short bus, man. That's pretty cool.
and in English, yeah. Bad Bunny should have ridden on that bus. So I have this. I just pulled this up as an article or a thing that had just come out because this is Ground News, but I wanted to read this. So they have this direct quote from him where he said, "You will always be enough for one reason, and that's because Jesus Christ loves you." It turns out that was a very outspoken believer. Apparently, within the last few years, he'd use his time on stage to share like Jesus and with his mainstream rock audience, and so that's kind of a cool little side thing, is just knowing that, I don't know if it was the cancer that pushed him towards his faith or if he was already there before, but it looks like he was a believer before the end. So just kind of going around the horn. Obviously, it's sad news. It sucks. It hits all of us '90s kids a certain way. Did you guys have a favorite Three Doors Down song? Let's go with that. And did anybody see him in concert when they were touring at all?
I did not see him in concert. I think I might have just missed him each time, but I saw all the other ones, Creed, Nickelback, all that stuff, and just didn't get it to Three Doors Down. But yeah, big fan at the time. Kryptonite was there, but then When I'm Gone, I just remember that one hitting really hard. And now I kind of want to go back and listen to that one because it might, make a little bit more sense because he's gone now. And let's look at the age too. It was 47. I don't know if you want to pull that screen back up, but yeah, if you could pull that back up, it was like 47 years old. Was it renal cancer and everything? And it's so interesting now that I've been through so many medical issues now in the last 5 years, where it's just, okay, yeah, on Saturday, Brad Arnold, lead singer of the founding member,
old. Yeah.
47, died after a battle with cancer, and a representative said that he died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his wife and family. In last May, Arnold revealed that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 clear cell renal, I don't know how to say that,
Carcinoma.
carcinoma.
Yeah.
Yep. So Yeah, and maybe Bree, you can talk about this a little bit with different things that I'm sure you've learned and experienced with the medical stuff. Is like you think that you're Superman. I mean, I did growing up, 20 years old, 30 years old, and then you just get hit with something like this, and it changes your whole world. Bree, other guys, if you're like me, it's so difficult to explain it because it's different for every person. What do you think,
Yeah,
Bree?
it's pretty easy to, be like, oh, that won't happen to me. But once it happens to you, that's it. Your 100% turns to zero real fast. But it's, the cancer cases, they keep coming younger and younger, especially since the pandemic started. And that's something that needs to be researched better instead of just, oh, I don't know, it's just happening. No, people in their 30s and 40s are not supposed to die from aggressive carcinomas and metastatic cancers. Our cells are not supposed to function that way, at least until quite a bit later. It's unfortunate. It's something that we need to be looking at, but it's a reminder for all of us that just because you're in your 30s and life is good, just because you're in your 40s and your life is good and your kids are all well and everything, it doesn't mean that won't change in a drop of a hat. So take it from me and take it from Drew. Take a minute, remember what's important. Take the time to make sure that you have some stuff in place. So if this happens, when this happens, you're ready. Because it's an incredibly high statistic. 1 in 2 people will die from cancer or heart disease. And none of us
Yeah.
are prepared for that.
Yeah,
So life insurance, make sure you've got good health insurance and disability insurance just to start.
This reminds me of what we saw with like during at the very early stages of like the COVID vaccine being pushed out. We had all these even 20-year-old athlete celebrities just like having heart failure or heart attack issues and stuff. So yeah, you bring up a really great point with that. Yeah, I mean, so there's like, yeah, I'm with you, Drew, about like the here or the When I'm Gone or Here Without You, some of his other great hits. Yeah, chat. Throw in the chat. What was your favorite Three Doors Down song?
Yeah,
Yeah, David.
my favorite song.
Go ahead.
though-
Go ahead.
Yeah. My favorite song was When I'm Gone as well. And like, here's the thing. I remember they played Three Doors Down at the North Dakota State Fair in like, man, what year was that? It might have been like 2002, 2003. And like, I wasn't able to go to it, but like I was like, that was like my era where I liked kind of everything that was coming out, that was kind of post grunge. And I used to like honestly, I would listen to their first album just nonstop back and forth. And I always thought kind of like Creed, they had kind of like an undertone, like an element of like gratefulness, gratitude, of like, I don't know, like understanding that this life is not forever and stuff like that. So I wasn't surprised to find out, that Brad was a Christian, like as in the same way that like, again, Creed had some real bangers, but when you think about like the intent of their songs was to like show like the human side of us, and that you have to live in kind of like you were saying, Brianne, this perspective that like this is but a vapor, this life. And so getting yourself prepared, not just like for those loved ones, but get yourself spiritually prepared, man. And I get not everyone's a Christian. I am. I do believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God who died for us, and that we have that path for salvation through him. So it's like making sure that you have that as well. And I did want to just share, again, these are little things that always, to me, as crazy as it sounds, used to be pretty standard across the board, where you wouldn't have to point this out and be like, well, this is like special or unique. But I mean, Three Doors Down, they used to perform for our men and women that were overseas. And so they have this concert that they did, When I'm Gone, performed on the USS George Washington, that was, deployed out in the Mediterranean Sea. So like, I don't want to play it so we don't get, taken down for copyright or whatever, because I bet everyone and their grandma are playing Three Doors Down, so they're probably super high on DMCA takedowns. But I just wanted to again show that like this was a normal thing. Like you wouldn't like congratulate Three Doors Down for going and performing for the troops, but now it's like it's become this thing where a lot of people apparently don't like this country and don't like the men and women that serve this country, which is insanity. But yeah, that to me has like, again, like after I heard the news, it's like I was listening to all those old cuts, man, and just jamming out to the entire album, to be honest. It's a good album.
Yeah, I hear you. And then just when it comes to, how do I put it? Just the music industry was one of those ones where they were on the front line of the COVID vaccine, because the venues were saying, okay, and the insurance and everything like that, okay, you guys can't play or you can't have people unless they're vaccinated, or all these different things, showing cards. And a lot of bands had to make that decision: is, are we doing it, and are we going to make our members do it? Many people know Pete Prada, my buddy, he was formerly of The Offspring at the time in the 2020s, and he was let go from The Offspring without even the band didn't even tell him. I don't want to. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but he was like, he had Guillain-Barré syndrome, the same issue that I have from the COVID vaccine. He had it previously as a child, and his doctor said, no, do not get it. Absolutely not. There's a good chance you could have a relapse, and many other things. So he did not. And then he finds out that he's been booted from the band, and now the band can go and play at all these theaters and stadiums and stuff like that. And then they're also requiring their fans to go along with it as well. So yeah, now it makes me think, okay, now when these musicians are passing away, are getting cancer, are getting these other things, were they vaccinated? And and all these questions kind of come to mind, and it really shouldn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and to you as well, Brianne, like this is no longer just purely coincidence. I know at first it's like, yes, we know people get cancer. Cancer has existed since the human genome became a thing because you have mutations, right? But the frequency and the quickness of people that 100% got the jabby because they felt pressured into it. I kind of alluded to this before on the last stream. Like I did a bunch of research, and because of my, like, if you want to say multitude of like health issues and my perfect storm of a situation where my mother, who has now passed away, was in a nursing home, and I knew that she wasn't going to be released. And so every day that I had with her was a day that I wanted. So me and my wife, we took the mRNA jab, and we took 1 and 2. And so we knew, I know a lot of people didn't do any research. I knew what the risks were, that it's experimental, and like messing with their mRNA is like a crazy thing to do. But I was like, whatever, man. Like, if this is how I go out, this is how I go out. But there's a lot of people that felt pressured to do it, and they wouldn't have otherwise done it. And to me, you start to see how these things come together, and you're like, imagine if you got it because everyone said, it's safe and effective, right? And then all of a sudden you get this aggressive form of cancer. So like every single one of these celebrity stories that I hear of these young people getting aggressive forms of cancer, it just makes you say, like, is this what has happened? Like, this is what we did. And I know that some people are like 100%, like I can show you the data that this is happening, but at least I think as a society, we have to realize, and again, back to what you do for work, Brianne, like part of React 19 is to be able to try and connect these people that have been devastated by these things to resources to be able to help them find some type of answer, or solution, and stuff like that. So I'm just curious, like from your perspective, do you have like a heightened level of like, yeah, when these things happen, it's just, we're going to expect this, we're going to see this.
Yeah, we've tried everything possible just to help make this issue more palatable, something that's easier to digest. But the problem is that every single specialist that we have talked to and that we work with still with our React 19 medical board, they all say the same thing. that these conditions after COVID vaccination are the most complicated conditions they've ever had to treat. And just like Drew with the Guillain-Barré, it's not just the Guillain-Barré. There's always some other weird, like, myriad of symptoms that pop up that he's like, this is something I've never heard about before in my life. And then he goes and asks other people, and sure enough, other people that have been harmed by the COVID vaccine that did not have Guillain-Barré, but ended up with, a rash and some tinnitus at the beginning, they'll say, yeah, I have those other symptoms too. So it's something that we've tried to simplify, and we do have, several symptom clusters that we've worked out. We've got protocols that we're working on and diagnostics, but it's still very elusive, and there needs to be real funding to actually research this, because, we don't even know how to cure type 1 diabetes yet, right? And physiologically, type 1 diabetes is actually way less complicated than this is. So it's hard, but we're trying to help people understand it's an issue.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, and then it involves so many different aspects: political, legal, medical, all these different pillars of things that I know I'm not familiar with all these different industries, and I'm just getting to know these things, and then you get to know them, but then you also have the uphill battle. And hopefully more and more censorship kind of goes away. So we're able to talk about this stuff a little bit more on YouTube, which is great. Obviously, we're not doing any calls to action or anything like that. We're telling our story and our experiences in the last couple of years and what the future may look like. But yeah, going back to kind of what David said earlier, I do like the idea, and AK a little bit too, of the undertones that Three Doors Down and these other bands had. I compare it to also movies at the time. We used to have these, hero journey, these like, you're going for something. We're starting off at, you're like, you're new to something, and then you go through a struggle. I just remember as a teenager hearing these bands, and it's like, yeah, I'm going through that. And of course, it's completely different for a 14-year-old to a 28-year-old, musician and stuff like that. But they were talking about real things, the lyrics and how they put it out there and performed it, and you could actually like relate. And music nowadays, I know I'm older and 40 now, but I just can't relate to any of this kind of music. I'm sure the kids.
It was those coming of age songs in coming of age movies that actually connected.
Well, and that's what it
yeah.
was. Yeah, because you remember like Smashing Pumpkins in 1979. Obviously, people that experience were alive.
Just
and
played
teenagers.
that today.
Nice. In 1979, I just remember watching that music video in the 90s. I'm like, wow, what an experience, during that time. And you compare it to the other movie, Stand By Me and stuff like that, where it's like we watched these things in the 90s about earlier decades, and it's like now we're in 2020 and we're getting these things in, and it's not the same. We're getting reboots and remakes and prequels and sequels.
I miss the rock bands that were putting out hits while our superhero movies were coming out, or any of those coming out, like Spider-Man and Nickelback, Hero, fantastic piece of music.
Wait,
that's a good point.
More of that.
Did you just praise Nickelback?
It's the one. Listen, you can't.
I will defend
Spider-Man
Nickelback
because of
Listen,
Nickelback. I will defend
denaturalize
that
and deport.
Nickelback song.
You're going to Canada, boy.
Okay. I don't know if you guys know this about Nickelback. Everyone like hates on it, but it was like, how do I put it? Every 6 seconds, there was a point in time in the late 90s, early 2000s, every 6 seconds, Nickelback song, How You Remind Me, was played. So you could count to 6 seconds, and then somewhere in the country it was being played. And it's not like it was bad. We just got so much of it. And so it turned into
Nickelback
this
is like
thing.
the McDonald's of music. Everybody's
Thank you.
listening to
I
it.
agree.
Nobody wants to admit that they're listening to it. When you're having a day and you just need to pick me up, you're just listening to Photograph or something. Like, that's no. AK,
it's a memory.
I push back on your let's hate Nickelback narrative. I
Listen, man.
unashamedly love Nickelback.
Listen, bro. Like I agree with you. So I grew up like basically like a post grunge kid, right? So like I listened to Korn, Seven Dust, right? Like I have a Nirvana tattoo, so like Nirvana was kind of like what spurred me into music, right? And so like me and my buddies we would joke around about Nickelback all the time, but like I'm like, oh, dude, no, they got some good bangers. But you're like, yeah, man, Nickelback sucks, dude. But yeah, no, they and so I like to just crack on people, but I love good music. And yeah, dude, they had great bangers, very poppy, like pop rock, and it just, you know, music that would be a little bit too heavy for other people. They didn't like it, but I would say talent wise, yeah, dude, like they're good, super good. But yeah, what about you, Brianne? Were you a Nickelback fan? Were you a Three Doors Down fan?
I was Nirvana.
Okay,
I was
all right.
definitely.
There you go.
I was
That's
a little
good, that's good,
spicy as
yeah.
a teenager.
Foo
yeah.
Fighters? What about Foo Fighters afterwards?
Foo Fighters were okay, but I was like much more into Nirvana, MXPX, NoFX.
Yeah.
You know, Green Day,
All
Green
right,
Day,
yeah.
Smashing Pumpkins. Those were like my
Smashing
faves.
Pumpkins. My
No
intro was
effects,
Smashing
yeah,
Pumpkins.
man. Like there was. Do you remember that CD Punkorama? It was like
Yes.
Punkorama, like 97,
Outstanding.
98, something like I can't remember what it was, but like yeah, man. Like we used to jam to those as well. Like I used to paint my fingernails black. I used to dye my hair a bunch of crazy colors. No, for real. I
But
had
wait,
both of my
but this
eyebrows
was
pierced.
before.
Say it ain't so.
Okay, the hair coloring thing. I am devastated that the youngsters, what they're doing with hair color now, because it is not what it was when we were kids. Just saying. Like when
No,
we were kids, the colored hair, like it was supposed to intimidate people. And now what it does is it makes people think, oh, you're a sad puppy. I need to be worried about every single thing I say to you because you may be offended at any given moment, at any
Or if
given
you
time
step
of
out
day.
of this coffee shop, the wind is going to blow you away because you haven't been eating meat, so your bones are hollow. Absolutely. AK, side note, you said you dyed your hair and painted your nails. Is that why your hair is what it is now?
Oh no.
Yeah, that's why I lost my hair. You know, it just started to get thin because because I actually used to strip that because you know obviously I'm black, and so I would bleach my hair with like literal bleach, and my hair would lose all of its curl, and it was like all strawy.
Oh.
But then I could literally dye my hair with Kool-Aid because like in my small town. We were like an hour and a half away from the next big town that had like a Hot Topic where you could go buy the Manic Panic, like cool, crazy.
Not Hot Topic. Oh,
No,
God.
that's where you would get the Manic Panic hair dye. So instead, we would literally take Kool-Aid, and me and my best friend, man, we would that's what we do, man.
Good times in the 90s. Yeah. I know.
Drew, bring us back on
That was
track.
the
We're
best
way off.
times in the 90s.
No, it was. Yeah. And you don't know it till it's gone. You know, it's right there until it changes into something else. And I hope that the kids nowadays are really appreciating.
And now we have
their-
Bad Bunny.
Yeah. And bring it all the way back around to Bad Bunny. And it's cool.
2
People can like
Chainz.
whatever they
Like,
want to like.
If those are the
Yeah.
names you're coming up with, I don't want to hear your music. You can't be that creative. 2 Chainz, Bad Bunny.
2 Chainz. Hey, listen, I like 2 Chainz. Here,
I do too. I'm just saying
before
the
we
name is terrible.
Before we
All
move
right.
off of this topic, I just want to show everyone. Okay, this is what I look like when I was 16. Okay, this is
Oh, no.
a young AK,
Dang.
literally at 16.
Oh my
That is
God.
That is so
That is-
90s. It's amazing.
That
Who
is
is
a
that?
man
Who is that
child.
felon?
Dude, that's 16. That's me at 16. Okay, with
That
both
guy
my
went on a fishing
eyebrows
trip and it did
pierced,
not go well. Look at all them
my
holes.
labrae. Yeah, no,
That
man,
guy is
but
going
yeah,
to
I just-
represent the RNC one day.
Well, I do represent the
There you
RNC.
go.
I know,
RNC
right?
committee man. Hey, your next campaign, you should use that photo.
Anything's possible. All
They
right,
will
but
be
the whole point-
confused because it looks like the new piercings.
Yeah,
and
they
hair
would think I
coloring.
was like some libtard.
Yeah, you'd
like,
fit in now. They would they would address you as they them if you looked like that at Starbucks now.
so true.
But yeah.
So yeah, let's.
So
Drew,
enjoy
yeah,
the
we can
music
roll the next topic.
while you
brother.
have it. Yeah, enjoy that music. Yeah, R.I.P. Thoughts and prayers to the family of I don't want to get his name wrong. To Brad Arnold of Three Doors Down, gave us some amazing memories, and yeah, it's gonna inspire me to just push myself, develop myself in my own creative way with my knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's the way I used to take in this stuff. Be like, he is awesome at music or writing or performing or whatever. I'm gonna take that inspiration and try to see what I can do with my own life, not in that same aspect, but in another way. So, yeah,
Drew,
shout
I'll
out
make you
to
a
Brad
playlist
Arnold.
of Three Doors Down and Nickelback just so that you can play it around AK.
I
All right.
like Three Doors
Stop
Down.
digressing me. Let's go to AK with topic 3. What do you got for us related to Trump's DHS wins?
Yeah, man. So at the end of the day, right, like people I think have forgotten that the entire reason, not entire, but a majority of the reason why President Trump was able to get a second term is because he kept on saying that he wanted to help make America great again. And one of the best ways to do that is that we have to initiate mass deportations. And so one of the biggest pushbacks has been during this entire mass deportation is that liberals and those that believe in open borders are doing everything in their power to stop the mass deportation. So, and one of these kind of challenges that keeps happening is when ICE goes and picks up someone that has a detainer, basically all of these court filings are pushed forward for habeas corpus. And essentially what it does is it says that you have to produce this person and they have to then be given a bond hearing and that they can be released back into the United States until they actually are able to have some hearings. And so you had these federal judges that were making these rulings and, you know, the DHS kept on appealing them. And last week, I believe it was on Friday, the appeals court in the Fifth Circuit came out and said, you know what, the policy of the DHS of holding ICE detainees without bond hearings is legal because the law says that it is. So a federal appeals court on Friday endorsed the Trump administration's policy of holding broad groups of immigrants, immigration detainees without access to bond hearings, a major legal victory for President Trump and his deportation crackdown. In a 2-1 decision, a panel of federal judges at the Fifth Circuit of Appeals said that the Trump administration had properly reinterpreted an immigration law last year to disqualify many unauthorized immigrants arrested by Immigration Customs Enforcement ICE being able to ask an immigration judge to be released on bond. The reason that this is so huge is because, again, one of the biggest impediments have been to mass deportations is these ideas of previous administrations basically breaking the law and setting what we would call jurisprudence, where they say, okay, well, even though the law clearly says this, we're just going to interpret it differently. So this appeals court ruling says, no. The Trump administration is actually applying the law as it should be. And so, yes, they can do this. And so this is going to expedite the deportation of individuals. So we're going to see a huge uptick. I love to see it. The other thing that I think is important to understand is, again, is that either we're a country with laws and borders, and if we have laws that our Congress passed, which the Trump administration is saying, according to these immigration laws, if you entered the country not through a legal port of entry, and then after the fact said, oh, when you get caught, I claim asylum, that's not the way that the law is written. You have to declare that you are seeking asylum when you enter the country through a legal port of entry. You can't just break in the country and then when you get caught say, oh, I'm an asylee, and then therefore I get a bond hearing. So this is a huge, again, a huge break for those of us that believe in mass deportation. So I'll kind of go around the horn. David, like, even if you don't know a whole lot about this ruling, you know, do you think that this helps, I guess, the normie crowd realize that the Trump administration aren't fascist, they're actually following the law? And when you have an appeals court say these lower courts are garbage, you know, do you think that that helps our case of trying to get normies back on our side here?
I mean, yeah, it does. It kind of erodes that, you know, the number one like fascism argument people try to throw around is that like he's circumventing the courts or he's doing things that are not the will of the people. And the reality is he won the popular vote. You know, this was the will of the people. And then now you have the courts backing up what he's doing. And people are so quick to forget everything that the Obama administration did. In fact, I had this video. I was going to try to pull it up here before you. I thought you were going to come to me second, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. If I find it, I'll pull it up. Of this lady on Instagram, kind of breaking down all these like terrible things happening in the immigration system, like to people getting deported. And then she's like, "Oh wait, all of this is what happened during the Obama administration, including like food with like bugs and maggots in it, and like subpar living conditions." I think this is just a great victory flag, if you will, on our side of the conversation. And yeah, I think it's going to push people in the middle to have to more openly acknowledge that, like, you know, the courts are backing this, you know, the American people are backing this, the legal immigrants are backing this, and they're actually, a lot of them are getting a lot more vocal. Like, I don't want this, I don't want what's been here. And we need to get a handle on our immigration problem. So I think this is a big positive. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
like,
then just going back to the whole, it's the, like you said, AK, the will of the people. So it's like, okay, what can we all agree on? A solid border, and then it's like, now how do we follow the laws? I think most people don't even know what the laws are, and this references what you said, David. Be like, well, Obama was actually deporting with ICE, for that, for 8 years, a ridiculous amount of people. And most people don't know that. They only see what the news is telling them, what they think Trump is doing and ICE and all this stuff. Like, it's the first time it's ever happened. And we talked about in a previous episode, Tom Homan was given one of the largest medals by President Obama at the time. And he served in ICE and everything like that. And now so many people think he's just the worst person ever. And it's just like, you need to understand how things work. So that seems like a win in that case.
yeah, and I guess the other thing to just, again, a lot of Americans wanted mass deportations, and some people have been critical of the Trump administration, have said, like, hey, these deportations aren't happening fast enough. But this is the reason why, okay? It's because until this appeals court ruling, it basically, all of these district judges kept on ruling and saying that the Trump administration can't do this over and over again. And as frustrating as it might be, there are those of us, myself included, that wish that the Trump administration would basically like throw a middle finger to these, basically these federal district judges that are issuing universal injunctions, which I believe is 100% unconstitutional. That's literally what the Supreme Court is for, or even an appeals court for a broader district. But you have these lower district federal courts that are saying universal injunctions, like, we're going to rule for the entire United States for my district. But the Trump administration has said, listen, we're going to follow these rulings, and on these specific cases, that's what we're going to do. So this is a huge win, and you are going to see the number of deportations ramp up significantly, because this is one of the reasons that it was being held back. There was also kind of like a nice dovetail story to this. There was just earlier today, right before we went live, there was another ruling that came out from another district court from the Ninth Circuit, and this district court ruling is in regards to temporary protected status. And so Kristi Noem wrote, in a win for rule of law and vindication of the U.S. Constitution under the previous administration, temporary protected status was abused to allow violent terrorist criminals, national security threats into our country. TPS, temporary protected status, was never designed to be permanent. Yet previous administrations have used it as a de facto amnesty program for decades. Given the improved situation in each of these countries, we are wisely concluding that it was intended to be a temporary designation. So again, that's another win that will, again, ramp up the amount of deportations, because all of these lawyers were saying, no, these people have temporary protected status. Well, what's the definition of temporary? If you're going to be here on a status for 30 years and you're saying what, your country hasn't gotten better? Like, that's insane to me. Or your specific situation hasn't improved. Like, the bad guys that were after you haven't died or been killed. Like, and so I just think that, again, it was this excuse that people that don't want to deport people that don't want to enforce our borders, were using to stop deportations. And one last piece, and I'll kick it over to you, Brianna, if you have any thoughts on this topic. One last piece, Drew, you are right that the Biden administration, technically on paper, did have more deportations. I should say not Biden, but Obama. The problem is that much in the same way that they would apprehend and say, you're deported, the moment that the person said, I'm here under this status, they would stop the deportation and they would allow them to remain in the United States. So even though they apprehended people, they actually didn't send them out of this country, and they also didn't keep them in facilities for a long time, because all of these habeas corpus petitions came before. And so they weren't real deportations. We need to do real deportations where you go back to your home country.
I see what you're saying, AK.
Agreed,
It's kind of like cleaning a house. It's like, yeah, we clean the closet, but now everything, or clean the room, but now everything's in the closet. Oh, we're going to clean the closet, but now it's over in a different room, or it's underneath a rug. And it's just like, yeah, it's all about how you define these things, but the end result should be a clean house with everything kind of in order. And it's how each administration kind of went about that. And it's of course it's a murky subject and all this stuff, and yeah, it gets a little in the hair. I don't know, Bree, if you got any suggestions on this or any relevant things.
No, I've just been watching what's been going on in Minnesota, and it's breaking my heart. And I know that's the sentiment of a lot of people across the country, that is, it's chaotic and very tense and scary for all involved, and it shouldn't have to be that way. Here, we don't have nearly the ice presence in the Intermountain West as we've seen in Minnesota and some other places. And so it's a little bit of a different game, but even just with the threat of deportations and, Big Brother's combing the cities to find everybody, the crime has gone down significantly in, just from the threats. And so we don't have the presence here, but the crime has definitely magically disappeared.
Yeah, and that stuff kind of slowly happens. You don't really notice it, kind of like my cleaning reference, until it gets horrible. So both, like you said, with the crime, just slowly gets there. But then also, I'm big into finance and real estate and stuff. If you want lower prices and houses, watch, millions of people leave here, and that will shift around the ability to, if, Gen Z wants the ability to buy a house with less amount of the wrong people here. When I say wrong, I mean legally and everything like that, by the books, you'll see the housing market completely change, and employment and all these other things that slowly kind of decayed over time.
Yeah, you want, it's ironic that the more enforcement officers you put somewhere, the crime disappears. And that's just maybe that doesn't help the left with their defund the police argument. But I actually, AK, I was telling you about this video, and I did find it, and I did send it to AM, and it looks like he has it prepped. I saw this on Instagram. This lady, Black Card Decline, go follow her, guys. Fantastic. But she does this breakdown of what used to be going on with immigration and what's going on now. But go ahead and
had over 900 SA cases filed, and only 3 of them were investigated. There are children being held in cold cages with foil blankets for warmth. Only a quarter of the people being deported actually committed crimes in this country. And there are over 3 million people that are in the process of being deported. There are maggots, living maggots in the food, in horrible, wait, those are Obama's numbers.
That's good. That's good, AM.
That's good.
I love that at the end where she has the actual graph up the top. That's her content's always hilarious, and it just gives the whole thing context. Absolutely. Like we're deporting people. Yeah, we're actually hopefully finishing the process and sending them home. But we're not, like this whole, like I saw the photos of the interior of one of those children detention, if you will, areas, and it looks nicer than my middle school. Like, it looks incredible. I'll go there. Like, let me take a day off from work. I'll go sit there and, set up a gaming table or something and play some desktop games or something. Like, it's comfortable.
Like here's the thing that you have to understand, right? The reason why these conditions were so deplorable during the Obama administration, during the Biden administration, and to be honest, partially during Trump's first term, is because, again, like, the precedent was set that, we can hold people for long amounts of time. That's not the way that this is supposed to work. Like, you get snatched up, you're supposed to be deported pretty quickly. It's like pretty straightforward. Did you come through a legal port of entry? Oh, you did. Were you given temporary status? Oh, you were. If you weren't, you got to go. If you overstayed your visa, you got to go, right? Like, that's how it's supposed to be. But instead, because there is this entire apparatus that wants to have illegals here for a whole multitude. I'll give you the least nefarious, which is we don't have enough children. So we need basically slave labor. That's like the least nefarious, which I know sounds crazy to say that slave labor is the least nefarious, But like, so we don't want to send too many people back home too quickly because who's going to pick our crops? More nefarious is like, yeah, these are like people that are being sex trafficked, and they are, you know, part of a very, very dark underbelly of society that fuels not just here, you know, appetites in the United States, but across the globe. And so you can't just deport everyone. You have to have these kids that they catch that go into, like, they disappear. Like, there's 300,000 children and 140,000 have been found. But since the Biden era, there's still, like, again, that's 160,000 children that we have no idea where they're at.
That's a good point.
Those
AK.
are the numbers they know about.
And that's the numbers they know about. But that's the point. This system wasn't designed. So, yeah, it's hard to keep up a facility, keeping it nice and clean and all this different stuff, when it should be you grab the people, you verify who they are. If they don't have a legal reason or their status is expired, they go back to their home country. And if they have kids and you can verify that they're their kids, they go back to their home country. If you can't verify that they're not their kids, they should be put back into the adoption system or into a foster system, not just sent to random strangers across the country.
Yeah, and going back to the whole football thing, Tim Tebow has been doing some amazing work in trying to figure out this stuff when it comes to trafficking and children, and he's been doing amazing things. I've been catching a few like podcasts that he's been on lately, and he said something like, "We found so much information, but nobody wants to talk about it." He said something like, "Nobody, you know, people's brains don't want to go to that kind of trauma, you know, relating to, you know, all the different things that we've heard recently with the Epstein stuff and things like that. People just want to be able to live their lives, but there are horrific things, and a lot of it comes from this open border, letting things slide, letting things, you know, looking the other way kind of stuff." So yeah, that Tim Tebow's been doing a ton of work in that area.
Yeah, and I guess you know, we're at the point in the show where I think we still have some other topics that we can go through, but like we did last week and what we've been trying to do with each of our shows is we want to give our guests the opportunity to really talk about what it is that they do, and just be able to have kind of like, almost like we're doing a mini interview of you, Brianne, of like, let's really talk about the things that you're passionate about. And clearly when it comes to your work with React 19, it's just, I want to hear more of your story. So if you don't mind, Drew, I know that you probably have some questions kind of lined up, and I'll kind of flow off of that. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that's a huge part of our show.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning. Yeah. Now we got some time right now. So Brianne, tell us, you know, more in depth of who you are, how you got this all started, and what you've been on, and especially the journey. I mean, I just know a small portion of everything you've been through, but yeah, tell us more.
Well, feel free to jump in whenever so it doesn't turn into a boring monologue, please. And thank you.
Yeah.
But
oh,
yeah,
I will catch you up to last week. We talked to Joel for a good
Perfect.
amount of time, and we did show a lot of the trailers to Follow the Silenced and and a few other things that we have been working on for the last couple of years.
Well, and he had a blast talking with you guys, by the way.
Good to hear.
Time. So, yeah, so I was just an average person, family, you know, young kids, just taking care of the people around me. You know, when COVID hit, I naively believed that we'd all, you know, step up together as a nation and get through this as a nation. And I didn't, for some reason, at that point in my life, see just how polarizing the situation was. I didn't understand the political dynamics behind the decisions that were being made. I didn't see any of it. So much so that I signed up for the clinical trial for the COVID vaccines because I just figured, well, I'm going to get it anyway at some point. I might as well help get us all out of the pandemic sooner. The promise already by the time the phase 3 clinical trials came out was that these were going to end the virus and that they had 95% efficacy. Do you remember all this? Yep. And so it was like, okay, this is awesome. I want to help get everybody out of this. So let's just do this, right? So I got my shot November 4th, 2020. It was the day after Election Day. And within an hour, my reaction started with tingling down the same arm as my injection. And it just felt like, you know, like when your limb falls asleep and it's that very heavy, painful feeling and you can't really move it that well because it's been asleep for so long and it prickles. That's what it felt like. then it moved to the other arm, and then it moved to my legs after a few days, and then up to my head. And I had that same sensation literally inside my brain. And at that point, it was the worst because I couldn't think, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. Couldn't eat. I would wake up multiple times during the night, couldn't sleep at all, and just have to remind myself, okay, just need to breathe for the next 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I'll jump in there
Made it 5
because
minutes,
that's
10 more
exactly
minutes.
that's where I was too before I went into full paralysis. So
Yeah.
you're saying, like you said earlier in the show, you talked about a lot of us experience those same symptoms that we're only feeling it and think of it. We don't know if other people are until we share our story. And yeah, I experienced the same thing until the time where I couldn't feel anything and I was fully paralyzed, needing to go into ER.
And for any new listeners, if you don't know Drew's story, for sure go and learn about his experience because it's
And actually, do you mind if I just
incredible.
share that? I was thinking about sharing that the individual video that we did the
Yeah,
filming
go for it.
in Utah. Yeah, do you want to tell a little bit about how that came to be, the filming that we did with each person?
Yeah, so through React 19, our patient advocacy organization, we're trying to raise awareness. And one of the things that we've been able to do is create a medical grant program that's awarded $1.5 million to people in need. And what we wanted to do was help to raise awareness in a non-confrontational, like aggravated way, right? We didn't want to really trigger everybody and make them upset to the point where they didn't want to listen to the message. And so we figured that our way of approaching this was to actually talk about the medical grant program. So
Yep, I'll jump into it right here
Drew,
then.
Yeah, Drew jumped in and shared his story. So
Yeah, we showed the main one with everybody last week, but this is my individual one we have on YouTube. And I got a few more views than other people. I have been sharing it a lot in the past couple months.
Anything's possible. Still, if you have physical limitations or invisible limitations, things inside, there are things that you can still achieve. And I'm figuring that out and actually feel like I'm living. If I can't walk, I can try to fly. I'm Drew. Out of high school, I joined the Army trying to figure out who I was in the world. It was just a path that I found myself on. And then everything kind of changed in 2021. Unit was saying, got to go get this vaccine. At the VA, got 2 doses of Pfizer, and then I get a horrible flu type thing. Goes away in a couple days. But then what replaces that is numbness, tingling in my fingers and my toes. And then wake up the next day and I can't move basically anything. Not too long after that, they said, we need to place you in a coma. And so while I was in this coma dream, just felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up of. My driving force to keep going and get as much of my life back is so this doesn't happen to anybody else. So React 19 now has a military chapter made for currently serving as well as veterans. Basically, if you've served and you've been injured by the COVID-19 vaccine, we're going to stand with you. If you're struggling with vaccine injury medical costs like I was, React 19's Care Fund might be able to help. Don't struggle alone. Visit react19.org/care to apply for financial assistance.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
That
Yeah,
hits me every time.
I love that. That's so good. Drew, side question. Was the hair, we were talking about AK's hair previously, and I'm a big hair guy, and I'm trying to find the one note of fun in all of this. Are you saying that the vaccine's side effects, potentially, allegedly, YouTube, is you have that Maybelline model hair now?
Maybelline. I don't
one's
know.
so
That's a
good.
Pantene Pro V commercial right there.
The Army kept it at bay, the beard, the hair.
If you guys
for,
want to sponsor
know,
us, Pantene Pro V, we're here.
17 years. So after that, I decided to let it go. And yeah, we're seeing how it happens. But yeah, I still got the facial paralysis. I was actually at speech therapy today with the VA. And then I'm gonna be in doctors and medical professionals every week for the rest of my life. I have to pretty much accept that. It's very difficult to accept that, but it's better than just hanging out on the couch in the hospital bed and just waiting to get worse. So yeah, I'm pushing myself, reached out to Reacting, and I didn't know, Bree, you can elaborate on this. I didn't know who to trust at the time. I mean, the past couple of years, especially early on, who I could talk to about this. The only reason I was able to meet Bree was because I jumped on Twitter at the time, X, when Elon bought it, because it's like, okay, I could finally talk and actually talked with other people, listen to the spaces, and hearing, like Bree talked about, the same symptoms, similar diseases, syndromes, whatever. But these symptoms, I'm like, I have that. And then I shared my story, listen to this. I became a speaker on these spaces. And then before I knew it, I was being invited to all these different podcasts and share my story, and then push myself to actually get on a plane, even with my power wheelchair. And just, I have to get out there. And I hope that more people do that. And React 19's been heavily assisting in so many different pillars in this aspect. Wouldn't you think, Bree?
I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the organization, right? Is to help people turn their pain into purpose. And that takes, not just the person suffering, that will to do what you've done, which is an absolute inspiration. Most people would just kind of crawl under a rock and that would be it. And you haven't taken that, for 1 second. You've pushed through more than any human that I know, really. And our role is just to help facilitate that, right? To help break down those barriers that people that are dealing with these new disabilities are faced with, because these are huge, financial issues. There's medical provider issues. You can't access the right care to begin with. There's education and how to navigate this stuff. And then there's the censorship on top of it. So it all culminates into this just crazy, firestorm of a mess, and people don't know where to start. And so Drew is a classic example of what can happen when you prioritize your health, when you don't take no for an answer, and you will do anything and everything to win or to regain functionality. And so Drew is a classic example of what's possible.
Thank you, Bree. I appreciate that. And I see a lot of that in you as well. And the big thing is, I have my bad days. I have my good, my medium, and my tough days. And if I can make my bad days less bad with the resources, with the connections, with I remember you saying on the video, on the documentary, it's like you guys have been talking to each other, for months or years on those tough days. And, I have no doubt that without even knowing it, you probably saved a lot of lives just by, communicating back and forth and just being that lifeline. And I've had that before where I've reached out to people have reached out to me. And sometimes that's all you need to be able to keep going to the next day.
Yeah. And that's what's so apolitical about this mission. And for some reason, everyone hears vaccine injury and they think, oh, you're a bunch of right-wing nutters, huh? And it's like, no. Something happened in the body. Yeah, we just, it's wild, the whole. And that's one of the crazy things about my injury story is I had no idea the political stuff that was going on behind the scenes. I naively thought when we did finally decide to speak out that we would be able to go to Ted Lieu, who was the Democrat senator who headed the COVID committee, and all of these other health experts, and none of their doors would open. And we even took a suicide victim's husband to speak to Ted Lieu, and it still was like we were talking to a brick wall, despite the fact that we had some really solid just experiences of people that deserved to be treated better. And it just never resulted in anything. But to rewind a little bit. So after my injury, Drew's experience is by far and above more catastrophic than mine. I was not put into a coma, for example. I did not have to relearn how to use my limbs, although I did have to relearn how to use my legs and my bladder. And that was really hard. But they had someone come into my home and do physical therapy there. I remember when I was rehabbing my legs, I walked down onto my driveway, and my driveway is on a slope. And it felt as if I had never stepped on uneven ground a day in my life, despite the fact that I was 39 at the time. And so it's really odd having to reconnect everything. And somehow there were already doctors, and this was still right at the very beginning of the vaccine rollout. There were already doctors that were starting to scream that vaccine adverse effects were due to functional neurological disorder, which means that you're nuts, right? It's like, I don't know how you can make up all of those weird symptoms. But anyway, so I spent several months just trying to survive, just like Drew did. And obviously, just like Drew, my kids are what pulled me through, my husband's who pulled me through. And I still lean on them still to this day when things get hard. 5 years later, it's still not great. But I have learned a lot of coping skills and a lot of ways to deal with it, right? And I've kind of grieved the life of who I was. And now I'm like, okay, this is who I am. And this is where I'm at now. And this is what needs to be done. So we reached out to the National Institutes of Health, which you guys probably know who that is, the lead research institution in the country, also funded by HHS and your federal tax dollars. My husband's a PhD chemist. He reached out to the NIH January 11th of 2021. If you think about how many people didn't have their shot by then, it was the vast majority of the country still, right? And we reported my adverse event to them. And we also reported that the drug company was not disclosing my adverse event to anyone else, right? So at that point, the NIH went back and did an investigation. They pulled my vaccine brand off the market, which was AstraZeneca. So they pulled AstraZeneca off the market in the US 9 days after we reported this to the NIH. And I thought, okay, cool. That's it, right? I didn't realize at that time that other people were being harmed in the exact same way from Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. I didn't learn that for another month and a half, but they started a study. The NIH started flying people out at that point for neurological issues after their COVID vaccines. So this, Guillain-Barré type syndrome that hits you and it just doesn't really make any sense. But they saw it with COVID. And so they acknowledged it to us, those of us that went out, they not acknowledged to us in person, face to face, that this was a physiological condition. They gave us tests and they diagnosed us with post-vaccine neuropathy and they gave us therapies. So if this was all in people's heads, why on earth would the NIH be flying people out to be studied and to be treated? Like, there's no reason for that. If anything, they would fly people out, look at them and be like, okay, you're nuts. And then they'd send them home. But they didn't do that. They gave us all therapies there.
Because they got the call, or they're reaching out to, or they're higher up people. There were discussions, and you know this as well, behind the scenes with these different doctors and politicians and stuff like that. It's yeah. There's so much that we don't know.
Well, and it's crazy because they on my last day there, the 8th day, I was laying there in my little hospital bed there, and they came in and they said, hey, we're going to disclose this to the public. We're going to give the research, to the public and disclose this issue so people understand there are protocols in place so we can help people like Drew, right? Of course, they didn't know Drew.
But, well, yeah. What month would you say this was?
This went on from January through June of 2021.
So this I whole was time, in the hospital during that time. I was hospitalized. Like, I could not leave. I was a prisoner in my own bed, in my own walls, from May until October of 2021. And I remember you telling me, you're like, if we would have known I was suffering like that, I would have been part of the documentary and gotten support. And instead, I was just laying there in my own mind, thinking it was just happening to me.
Yeah. And one of the most frustrating things about this was I was one of the first injured. And there's a lot of survivor's guilt, so to speak, because the NIH did fly me out and they did help me. And they did promise that if we stayed quiet for a little bit more, that they would disclose this to the public, which they obviously never did. They told me point blank to my face, just to make this crystal clear, point blank to my face in my hospital room. They said, we're going to disclose this. We need you to not talk about this, what we're doing at the NIH. We just need you to not talk about it. So at this point, because they had flown us out, we had talked to other people, that were out there. We didn't have any reason to doubt that they were going to go belly up, right? And they also had pulled AstraZeneca off the market at this point. So we were quiet. So we sat for a little bit longer till the end of the summer, hoping that they would do what they were supposed to. But then they just stopped talking to all of us and they went radio silent. OSHA mandates came out. And before you knew it, we're sitting there with huge medical records from the NIH. So it's not like our claims couldn't be corroborated very easily.
And at this time, you're talking about OSHA, they were requiring it for, the whatever government employees and government contract, civilian companies that are contracted with the government, all these different things. And then they started requiring it for private companies with less than 100 people. And so slowly they started adding all these different policies requiring it. And that's when all this stuff happened, the requirements, but also adverse reactions. And so it didn't make any sense. I found another trailer to the Follow the Silence. I want to check this one out. And then I think AK and David have some questions. So
Okay.
yeah, because I think this is showing that our, when we were both at the Santa Monica Film Festival, the film won Best in Fest. And yeah, it was a really amazing experience.
Where has humanity gone? Now we're out of the shadows. We're buried like seeds, but we grew gardens in the crowd.
It's moving, it's hard, it's intense. Whether you're vaccinated, unvaccinated, I really recommend the film to everyone.
There's information that I didn't even know about. It's incredible. It's a film about people denied access to healthcare, and that should be something that wakes us all up.
These people that put themselves out there to speak publicly, they are heroes.
Follow the Silence is really our way of giving the people a voice who were completely silenced for having dared share the fact that they were injured by the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, and I was in the audience during that time, seeing the film for the first time, and I could not keep myself together. And I don't know how you felt, Bree, being part of it and everything else, but yeah, that tore me up like no other. And then I come back home, and once it was released, it's on YouTube. You can watch the whole movie on YouTube. I highly suggest you guys listening out there watch this whole thing, and you'll see a side of the pandemic that you've never seen before. Now I want to go to AK if you're ready, and what do you got to say about this?
Yeah, so for you, Brianne, like what I'm, curious, just two things. What was your background, I guess, before any of this happened in your life in regards to I know that you were not at all really involved in understanding the intricacies of how politics is so ingrained into this. That's number one. And then the second part is if you could kind of tell us how you went from, okay, the NIH is literally lying to your face and being like, okay, we've got to do something. But yeah, I'm just curious because it sounded like, with your husband being, having his PhD, and you said chemistry or yeah. And then for yourself. So I'm just so curious about different people's backgrounds and how they kind of woke up that there's this system that if they come down against you, it feels like it's impossible to fight, but you guys are clearly doing a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening, to say the least. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Had I not had a front row seat to this whole situation, I don't know if I would have believed how bad it is. The government narrative control is very much as powerful as all the conspiracy theorists say. And the second we spoke up on social media, the truth, not even inflammatory, not even with like triggering words, but literally just, hey, heads up, this happened to me after my shot. People would speak out as being registered nurses or whatever, just so you're aware. Those would get shut down. Those would be, and not only that, they'd come after your reputation. They'd try to make you out to be like some crazy person, right? And it's the same playbook that we've now seen them go after, Trump for years, but now, Bobby Kennedy. So they've got this process down to a science. They really do. So when we came around, just random nobodies that were sick, crying out for help because our bodies were wrecked. It was no surprise to those that were already awake what was going to happen to us. And they hit us, they silenced us, they tried to bargain with us, they tried to placate us. So in the film, Follow the Silenced, we kind of detail all of that in a very entertaining, 90-minute documentary where we talk about the trial companies and how the trial companies tried to hide the injured participants and exactly how they did that with the numbers, right? And then we go into the government cover-up. And then we go into the FDA and the FDA's involvement in the government cover-up as well. It was horrible. And there's lots of secret recordings that we leaked in this movie. So there's never before seen footage of really top officials talking about this issue, in part because we finally woke up at some point and decided we need to start recording all of these guys, right, that we were talking to. But then we also end on the note of, okay, the government screwed us, the drug companies screwed us, even, private industry and social media screwed us. We got to get to work. And that's really why what you guys are doing here with this independent podcast and all the people that are really trying to think critically now, we need to continue to do that. Just because Trump is in office does not mean that we all just get to sit back and go, okay, cool, this is awesome, moving on, right? We have to be vigilant. We need to continue to push for what we want as, Republicans, libertarians, Democrats, whatever. We need to stay vigilant in what it is that will help everyday Americans. Get rid of the talking points, the elevator pitches, and look at what's happened over even just the last 5 years during the pandemic. And there's a whole laundry list of things that still need to be addressed that haven't even been touched.
Yeah. So what was it? Again, like, did you come from a background of, because you're pretty good at being able to express this. So what was your background, or is your background, I should say?
So I was a preschool teacher.
Okay.
So I graded finger paintings for a living. But
what
you're saying is
eloquent.
you're an
You're
expert
very
at
eloquent
taking
speaker
complex things and breaking them down to
Yeah,
the
making them
simplest
easy
forms
Yes.
for people,
children.
dummies like me and AK to understand what you're trying to say.
yes,
That's good. We need that. Absolutely.
And then at what point, like, how did you get involved with React 19? Like, was it just you met someone and then it just boom, or like, I'm just so curious how that connection from, being front row to all this to like being like, okay, now we have to do something and getting involved in this organization, or were you one of the founders? I can't remember.
She's a founder,
I was,
co-founder.
I was the
Yeah,
founder.
yeah.
So, but it really was just because we didn't have a choice, right? So like the very first time I talked publicly about my vaccine injury was when I was with Senator Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, speaking at his press conference in June of 2021. And I actually tried to get out of it. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be gone. I can't make it. And they moved the entire press conference. So I had to be there. So it just kind of happened. And Joel says this all the time, that this experience and the movement, we didn't choose this, it chose us. And, it just became an obligation at this point. We were privy to information from the NIH. We were privy to special information from different doctors, because we were right there at the very beginning of this. And we all felt a moral obligation to do what we could to get the word out to as many people as possible who were injured, who had family members that were injured, policymakers on the Hill, so they could stop mandating the shots, we felt like that was just the right thing to do. And I do genuinely believe that that was the right thing to do. And as Drew alluded earlier, I think we've saved a lot of lives by organizing the way that we have to try to bring healing for people. But yeah, so it's been quite an adventure, not anything that any of us expected or planned.
And one of the things that I've always so curious, and we kind of talked, Joel and I, offline, but I'm just curious, like with Bobby Kennedy, right, with HHS, and having so many people that had been very vocal in the Biden administration about how people were being treated and how science was being completely torn apart, the scientific process. I know that obviously not everything is like, you know, rainbows and puppy dogs and all that. There's so much work because these institutions are rotten. And so to pull out all of the rot, you know, you can't burn down the whole system because we still need to have a functional type of National Institute of Health, arguably, right? But I'm just curious, like, have you seen a change? Are there glimmers of hope that we will see something meaningful that will then encourage people to keep on pushing? Because sometimes it feels like some people have been like, screw it, man. Like the whole thing is just FUBAR and it's not even trying anymore. So I'm just truly curious from your perspective.
Well, you know, like going back to the 90s, right? I remember being a kid in the 90s rebelling and just listening to punk rock all the time. And then the other kids were like, well, are you punk rock enough? I don't think you're punk enough, right? I really think that there's a lot of that that's going on in the freedom movement now, where it's like, are you hardcore enough? Because you're not hardcore enough unless you want A, B, C, and D, right? And if you don't want those things, then you're not one of us, right? So it's just, we've got to get away from that. We have to be able to sit back and be rational about what we need from the health agencies and what we can expect, right? I mean, look, the reality is that the COVID vaccines did cause harm. And those people, they do not have a constitutional right to sue. There is no federally backed program that's helping them whatsoever with medical stuff or financial, right? And those two things are non-starters. They need to be addressed. As far as on the COVID vaccine front, stay tuned, be watching very closely. By the end of February of 2026, so just a couple of short weeks away, watch, because there will be the final first domino that is going to fall for the COVID vaccine injured specifically. There
That's
will
good to
be,
hear.
just like you were talking about, there is going to be the crowd that's going to be, well, that's not freedom movement enough. That's not part of what we want. I am telling you, the COVID vaccine injured need these things that are going to happen and start by the end of February. There is,
Yeah, Bree.
could we just like stop all the shots? Sure. But you know what that does for the people that are harmed? Absolutely nothing. What does that do for the people that are going to be harmed by other vaccines in the future? Absolutely nothing. And it's our job as advocates for people that are dealing with chronic conditions from vaccination to make sure that those rights that have been removed from the people that will be harmed are going to be replaced with reasonable remedies. Because our right to sue, it's not going to be restored in Trump's era. It's not. And so we need to be realistic about what we can hope for and what we can expect.
And that's a good point. I really
So-
had to turn my framing differently when I asked for questions because when I was in the hospital, I'm like, when am I going to get better? When can I get home? Or, you know, do all this. And the doctors would not have real answers. So I had to change it up, be like, what would have to be true to, you know, to get out of this? And now I'm framing all my questions in a different way. So like, yeah, I'm talking to these doctors and I'm like, if your child had what I have, would you recommend they get another? You know, stuff like that. And I'm really pushing back on these so-called experts and making them answer in a better way. But yeah, that's how I've developed recently, and I'm trying to help other people really change their framing of how they go about it. Because it's easy to get emotional, it's easy to get pissed off, and say the whole world is against me or this industry or this admin or whatever, and it doesn't do any work. And so that's how I've been like consulting and talking to people. But yeah, David, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I had a question actually. So obviously, you guys are putting out these documentaries, these films, incredible. By the way, I just wanted to say, Drew, watching your video, you know, speaking for myself, I'm very proud of the work that you put in, to get where you are now. I think you and I have talked about like the benefits of carnivore diet and just, cleaning up what we eat and all that sort of stuff. We've had some great offline conversations, even at AmFest over lunch. We were talking about it for a while, but my question, Bree, for you is, obviously you have this organization, you have these documentaries made. What's kind of the big picture? Like, where are you hoping to take your organization and maybe do with it in like the next, 5-10 years? Because like you said, we're not going to get all these solutions in Trump's time. So is there kind of a long form vision that we can be watching out for, that you guys are hoping to do with your organization?
For the short term under Trump's administration, we're hoping that there will be some common sense, research funding started. The answers will not come for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years from those studies, but we need money to actually start, right? Long term, Joel and I both would love to be able to help the health agencies reform so React 19 no longer needs to exist. We are hopeful and we would love to see some type of machine be put into place that will actually be a proper funnel and workflow for these patients. Because the reality is the NIH told me and everybody else that early intervention is key. So if there are therapies that can help treat these conditions so we don't end up losing as many people when there are harms from vaccines, why are we not letting the public know about those? Why are we not letting the medical community know about those? Why didn't Drew's medical professionals know that this could help him so he wouldn't have to go into a medically induced coma?
That's a good point.
That's the ultimate goal, is to just put a proper workflow in place.
Yeah, Bree, I told you this before. I had to, well, for one, when I went in the medically induced coma, that's where they did the plasmapheresis and IVIG. And then after they did that, they just kind of let me either become a vegetable or, like I did, I fought to get all my systems working. It the tracheostomy, the tubes everywhere. Like I fought every day in like a high school type environment, because it was like every hour I had occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, medications that had to be ground up and then pumped into my stomach. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I will. Fentanyl, Oxy, Dilaudid, like all these ones, like every medication that you can think of was just being pumped into me just so I could survive for hours in order to do the therapies to get back to stuff. And it was just, I know people keep telling me I need to write a book, but it's so tough to do. But yeah, so I had to do all that on my own, with the resources. But then later on, they just kept, when I got out of the hospital, they just kept pumping me full of medications, and it was only doing worse things. And my pain tolerance kept going higher. So it's like these so-called pain medications weren't even doing it, and they were causing more harm. So it took me going in over and over again to my neurologist saying, this isn't working. Like, I need something else. And I finally, I think it was after talking to you, Bree, and other people, and I had to tell them, I'm like, what about IVIG again? And they're like, and he said, well, that's expensive. And I'm like, to who? Will it work? Can I get it? Can we try it? Like, and so if you're out there, you have to fight, be your own advocate, look things up, share stories, and then go and ask for it, especially if we're paying all this money, these premiums, these out-of-pockets, these copays. Okay, I could go on forever and ever, but yeah, it's a rough road for sure, and you guys got to fight for your own stuff.
Yeah, and like one of the things that I have always been, again, so curious about, going back to last week with Joel, is I'm a person, like, kind of like I explained, right? Like, I have at least like a college level understanding of the English language. English was never my super strong suit. Neither,
Oh, God.
neither was mathematics. But I'm not a I got an average IQ. I like to tell folks. So like I would read a lot of the stuff that was coming out of COVID literature, right? Like, and like I said, like I've always been interested and fascinated. On previous shows I've said, like, I love the human condition. I think that our bodies are amazing machines, and like the things that our bodies can do. You guys remember Superhuman, that series that Stan Lee did?
Yep.
Where they would
Yes.
find like these human beings that have like these weird genetic
The
phenotypes,
electric current guy. I
all
remember
these
the
different stuff, right?
electric
Like,
current guy.
so I've always been so interested. So my point is that when COVID first hit, and I'm like reading everything from a layman's non-medical background guy to understand what is potentially at risk, I started to see that there was so much information that were in these studies that were published, but then the medical community would be like, oh, this is not, a good enough study or whatever, right? And so you would like see these glimmers of researchers that would put stuff out there. And so I know that I kind of asked you this already, but I truly am curious. Has there been at least a shift that you've seen coming from the medical institutions under this administration that is positive? I know that you said at the end of this month there's going to be something that's going to be great, but I want to just hear from your like honest perspective if there has been a difference in the way that they are approaching the concerns that so many people have in regards to vaccine injuries and just medical, like, true disinformation that came from the establishment that were lying to the American people.
I'll give you the honest take.
Yeah.
I've been disappointed. We were out in DC 6 times last year, and we got the blow off from several federal agencies' heads. We flew out there because we had meetings scheduled and they rescheduled, and canceled last minute. This is injured people traveling all the way out there to visit with them, and we were not on their priority list. So as of right now, it's a little bit better than under the Biden administration, but it needs to be a lot better. Right now, COVID vaccines just are not on people's radars. It's food, which is important, and some of these other conditions. So, yeah, but we're trying to change that, and we're pushing super hard. The end of February, there's all the people that were screaming at the top of their lungs through 2025 about, wait, are we just stepping over COVID and pretending like it never happened? That's exactly what's happening. So it's up to us to continue to push with this administration and say, no, this is important to us. My personal feeling is that the red wave largely came from the promises of COVID, a COVID reckoning. And that's where a lot of us that were in the middle, that were not, historical Republicans, that's how we jumped on board. It's not going to be that hard to address making sure mandates don't happen again. It's not going to be that hard to make sure that vaccine injuries from the COVID era are addressed. It's not. But it is going to show that there are some pretty powerful people that screwed up, right? Yep. And that allowed this and made this happen. So, I don't know.
It shouldn't be that tough, like you said, because in the past, when a country went through something like this, they changed their constitution. I know, I think it was Switzerland during the pandemic. They're like, we've experienced something like this before. So they put in their constitution, no, you can't lock people in their houses. No, you can't require this or that or medical procedures. And they were better than other countries. And so, yeah, it shouldn't be. Of course, we got pharmaceutical and stuff, and we're a bigger country, and we have all this innovation with pharmaceutical that the rest of the world gets at a discounted price. And so there's a lot out there. Let's move off this, try to talk about a little bit more fun topics. Bree, I want to thank you for that. Stay on board with us. Don't go anywhere. I don't want to end on a horrible note, because there are positive things that are going to happen in the future. I have to believe it. Even if we're not making waves as fast as we would like to, we are gaining more people that we're getting connected to, and it is helping people on an individual day-to-day basis. So, David, did you have something real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So just real quick for everybody in the chat, if you have a COVID story, obviously throw it in there, share what's going on. Let's get a conversation going with that. And then Bree, just kind of last question that I had is how can like the people viewing this support you guys and your organization? I think we're going to put some websites in the chat or in the live stream, but just kind of what can people do to support what you're doing?
Oh, they can commit to sharing the documentary with people that they know. If people are fired up and they want to, like stick it to a family member or a friend that's just been dismissing what they've been sharing and telling them, just have them commit to watch the documentary and come back with questions, because the documentary brings that human element in that changes the whole conversation. We get rid of the political dynamic, we get rid of the rhetoric and the ideology that makes this so like a lightning rod, and we just bring it back to this is what happened, this is how the people got screwed, and what are we going to do about it? So follow the silence, go watch it. If you feel like you want to become a part of React 19, come and you can fill out the form online at react19.org. Or if you want to donate, of course, the money goes to the CARE Fund, which is the medical grant program. And yeah, so that's how we would love your support.
Yep, that's a good point. There's two versions now of the CARE Fund. So there's the general fund that Bree Ann has been, instrumental in, and then last year I got helping with the military one. So there's one specifically for military veteran injured. So you can donate straight to that one, and that will go right to military members, because we weren't able to talk about this. And when you brought up with your commands, it didn't go well. And so that is one slice section that has been severely silenced when it is, because it affects your career, it affects your security clearance, all this kind of stuff. And that hopefully that's one big change that will come around. But yeah, let's go on. I'm going to highlight a couple of these chats. We got John said a bunch of stuff. Yeah, the Dr. Dre Super Bowl was great. The Justin Timberlake one. I actually worked at the Justin Timberlake one in Minnesota years ago. And so I got to meet him and a bunch of other people. And it was a cold day in Minnesota. It was one of the coldest ones. And people are here from all over the country, all over the world. And that was an interesting one. And then he talks about in the 90s, rock music, listen to probably Korn, Nirvana, Offspring, more hip hop, all that stuff. Very good. And then he goes on to say the left is like 10-second Tom from 51st Dates. Clearly don't remember the past because they keep trying to erase it. And that's similar to COVID and everything. I get it. You can relate to many different topics with the left and really just a lot of different people in politics. And then, he just goes on to talk more about Obama, Hillary. Yeah, all these administrations, they all do very similar things just in their own way. And whether it gets coverage or not, or people are talking about it, it's so divisive. I hate it so much. Then we got Vanessa. What are your thoughts on the way people are being apprehended for deportation? I'm not against ICE, but I'm against the controversy created on the White House IG in the news. Also, the treatment that ICE is giving to people, I don't think is correct. I believe a more organized and humane deportation process would be appropriate. AK, do you want to cover that one real quick?
So I appreciate that question. And here's the truth. Because we have specific laws that we, in this administration, I say we because I'm a Republican, part of the Republican Party, is that we are going to enforce the law. The problem is, in the state that we live in right now, Minnesota, for all intents and purposes, we've been a sanctuary state. I know that we didn't pass the literal legislation to turn us into a sanctuary state, but we, for all intents and purposes, don't force most county jails to actually uphold or enforce detainers that are turned into them. And Minneapolis and St. Paul themselves actually are sanctuary cities with sanctuary policies. So Ramsey County, Hennepin County, which are two of the most populous counties in the entire state of Minnesota, do not honor deportation orders. So what does that mean? It means you got to go out in the street into people's houses to catch them. And that means that it's going to be really, really nasty. But the same question that you would ask yourself, if there's a bunch of people committing violent crimes, and local law enforcement is not doing anything to actually help catch the people. In many of these cases, they know exactly where they're at, and they know the last time that they picked them up, but they will not share literally any information. Then yeah, you're going to have to do surveillance operations. You're going to have to start stopping people with vehicles that match those, and you are going to have more interactions. All to say that things will look way more messy, because that's the nature when you don't have law enforcement that's cooperating. So you're left with two choices. Do you want to enforce the law, or do you not want to? And if you're going to enforce the law and there's not local law enforcement that is helping cooperate, it's going to look messy. Now, I will say this, that Tom Homan, I think he has the more politically astute advantage because of all of his years. I think Greg Bavino is a great commander, but I think that Tom Homan, he kind of knows how to finesse these things. And I think he's been able to get cooperation. That's why things look less messy right now, because when you have good intel, it doesn't have to look so nasty. Like, you have your investigative units that will do their surveillance with good intel, and they can go and grab someone in a very, very non-conspicuous way versus like having broken information. And so, yeah, do I want the enforcement to look nasty? No, I don't. But if you don't have people, that's what's going to look like. And I'll just kind of one last little piece. If you have someone that refuses to surrender, right, and they have, a bunch of people that they've harmed, and law enforcement goes in and they're like the only way I'm leaving is out of a body bag, it's going to look mean and nasty and disgusting and horrifying because they don't want to give up. So my advice has always been convince and advocate and plea for your local law enforcement to sign detainers and agreements with ICE, 282G agreements, which there's a bunch of states that have already done that. And then secondly, just understand that like the elected officials that allow these sanctuary policies to exist, they're the ones that need to be told to stop with the nonsense so this can be as orderly as possible. Because you kind of alluded to this earlier, Bree, you're not seeing the same type of ICE action in other states, but they're actually deporting more people than from Minnesota. It's just they have more cooperation. And so that's at the end of the day what we need to see more of. But that's
yeah,
my soapbox.
we'll do an update next week on where things are at in Minnesota. Hopefully they died down, but you never know. Something can pop off with this boiling kind of water we're at. But yeah, it's been a great conversation, both with the news topics and diving into Brienne story, React 19. Bree, tell us where people can find you, find React 19. Just give a good spot where people can go from here, and then stay on with us. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, you can hop on react19.org. There's all kinds of resources there. We just barely launched a new app that has a provider network on a map, and so you can actually click on your state and see what providers are vaccine injury friendly that can help you. My socials on Facebook and Instagram is just Brienne Dressen, and it's the same on X as well.
Excellent. Thank you for the amazing conversation. AK, where can people find you? What do you have to say?
Yep. So you can follow me on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Real AK Kamara. You can follow me over on TikTok at AK Kamara. Every Friday, I'm on the John Justice radio show, iHeart station. That's Twin Cities News Talk. So you can listen anywhere live or podcast. And if you are in the Minneapolis, St. Paul listening area, 103.5 FM and AM 1130. And this Thursday, I'm going to be at Pints and Politics. That's over in Lexington, Minnesota at Cowboy Saloon. So come and check me out. I go around and I talk, but that's what I got going on. What about you, Mr. Webster? Where can people find you? What's going on?
Yeah, thanks for that, AK. So you can find me at The Peruvian Gentleman on most social medias. I think it's still 50 Webster on X. And yeah, just follow me. I'm posting, short clips, my conversations with people I had at AmFest. I post a lot of memes, a lot of culture stuff, trying to trigger at least one leftist a day, and just keeping the conversation going and making sure that conservatives are actively involved in pop culture, sports, and all those sorts of things.
Excellent. And then I am Drew Outstanding. You can find me on X at Drew Outstanding, where I talk about more of the COVID vaccine, my story, the kind of spicier topics when it comes to that. And then my YouTube channel that's where I do my speaking engagements, adaptive sports, Operation Outstanding in Field on YouTube. And I got so many mono ski videos that I need to upload, and I will pretty soon. And I'm really so excited to be on the way to competing. Last year it was the bi-ski, the sit ski, and I'm like, let me go, let me just fly. And then now I'm doing the mono ski, and I'm got 2 trips in Colorado coming up in a couple months. But yeah, and a big thank you to our producer AM back there with all the help. We appreciate that. And now we're going to go to our outro. So stay tuned, check this out, Culture Warriors Unchained. Catch us every week, Monday at the same time. So AK,
Culture Warriors Unchained, where the real attain your name, where the truth goes through the